So I wanted to talk about and I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scholar of it. I'm not an expert on it. But before I start, I'm going to talk about Plato's analogy of the cave, right? And people discount because there's the anecdote that we all talk about of Plato's analogy. There's the anecdote of it, and there's the exact words of it in Greek. Known, known, Plato's Academy. Ye who not know geometry need not enter. So if you don't know geometry and you're entering, you're already not in the game, right? Because that's an extra level or filter of knowledge, right? And I don't know geometry. I want to. But just well, a couple things. Discounting that, putting that aside, that discounts, and this is my criticism of Plato as Plato has been presented by himself as interpreted via history, if he wasn't just a character in the first place. Because the first geometer who ever conceived that the earth was spinning and that's why the sun went around the moon, or that's why the sun rose and set. The first geometer in Western history that we know of historically had to leave Plato's Academy and go study shit elsewhere, and then came back. Not talked about much, and I'm forgetting his name now, even though I've talked about him before, but which is like a bit of a rebuke. So you can know geometry really, 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 really well. But if it's not perfect, it's not going to answer every question. And if you have a question that geometry can't answer, you have to leave. What, Eudoxus, or it was either Eudoxus or one of Eudoxus's students. It was the first Western conception of a spinning world. And I think also Eudoxus also left to come back. Or there's Plato, and then there were these two other dudes, or the Academy and these two other dudes, and one or both of them left. I can't remember the scoop. I've talked about it before, but one of them came up with the first, theory of, you know, epicycles, which are derided now. But that geometrical description is an extensive, expansive form of descriptive beauty that blew everything else out of the water. So it was better. It was better. And if those two hadn't been wrong in the way that they were, Copernicus and Galileo couldn't have been right in the way that they are. And the way that they're wrong is going to inform that which will be right. What do you mean they're wrong? Well, what I mean is there's no unified theory. The world isn't flat, but the cosmos essentially is, or at least that's what they're saying, right? Or at least as it comes to us temporally. Anyway, all of that shit discounts the anecdotal. The way the stories have come to us, anecdotally, is almost more important, or it's equally as important. The boiled down notions. Me just saying Plato's parable of the cave. People have heard it, people know it. However big or small your conception is of it, like that in and of itself, that seed, cannot be underestimated. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful when an enormous idea can be boiled down to a couple words. In the way we combine all these anecdotes. It's beautiful because they're like little bubbles through time. They're little BBs, little bullets through time that meet me. So I have Plato's parables, and I have, this story and this religion and this thing I learned. They're all imperfect. So the gun with the bullet is perfect. That's the whole story. So if we consider, Plato's corpus, 21 guns. 21 gun salute, right? If we consider Plato's entire work 21 guns, well, that one bullet that hits me, it's not his whole corpus. I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned with the one that hits me. That's the importance of the boiled down, anecdotal, common man, common wealth. not completely as commonwealth is referred to historically, but not incompletely, but anyway, the anecdotal is super important. So if you don't know a lot about a lot of shit, but you have anecdotes, work with that. Because those are the bullets through time. Anyone who's done anything that has passed it along now. For as many people who have had a corpus, who have had written things and so on, right? There's all those who have written things that we don't have, even though now we do. And then, and it's a small fraction of people who have like written or done things, made songs or anything, made any type of art, produced anything that has lasted at all. It's a very small percentage of them that have reached, that have expanded their circle to the scope of Plato or Michael Jackson. But all those other little ones who have only touched a few people, or a few hundred people, or a few thousand people, like those are still so super important because it's part of the body. Not every cell is a bone, or not every organ is a bone. And there's however many bones there are in the body, and some are like this fucking big. And you gotta have them. Super important, right? But anyway, don't discount that you don't know this reference or that reference, or, even things I don't know anything that I'm referencing. It's building on these anecdotes, right? Yet there's truth there. There has to be. Now I'm trying to remember what I was going to go to before. Maybe I'll come to it. A picture's worth 1,000 words. A sculpture's worth 1,000 words. And how do you speak linearly around a sculpture? So you're going like this, and then you go like this, and then you go like this, and then you hold your flashlight here, and then you hold it there, right? It's 2,500 people walked around the statue of David with a flashlight in the dark. What stories would they tell? And how do you eat an elephant? Well, most people have heard that. How do you eat that? How do you eat an elephant? Or how do you describe an elephant? You have 3 blind men describing an elephant. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. That's what people normally say, right? Here are 2 alternate answers. What is this? I don't know. And how do you eat an elephant? You don't. That was kind of a good one. Anyway, like Plato's cave, the whole thing with the cave is that the anecdote of the cave, the common down boil anecdote of the cave that we pretty much collectively acquiesce to is that there's a fire in a cave. It's casting a shadow on all the people who have only been looking at the walls and looking at their shadows on the wall. And then they have to be turned around and put out the cave. And all they know are the shadows on the wall. They've never been outside the cave. But within this anecdote is a hidden anecdote: the fire. Who lit the fire? Oh, but it's just an anecdote. Right. And I'm expanding on it. We didn't start the fire. Blah, 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 blah. It's been burning since the world have been turning. Someone lit that fire. In the anecdote. Before you go out the cave, you got to pass that fire. When all you've ever done is had that fire at your back, and all you've ever done is seen the shadow flashing on the walls, right? The fire ain't the sun. The fire ain't the outside. Right? You're in the cave. You're not getting the shadow of the sun, except for maybe 1 person, or 2, or 3, that 1 day a year, when that sun reaches the right point. And illuminates. Because it sneaks through that hole of that cave just right and overpowers the fire. That's a different story than the one I'm concerned with today. Maybe I'll get back to it sometime. But the first thing that happens when you turn around, when you're in this cave, when you're chained, when you're in bondage, right? When you can't see, you can see, but you can't see. I ain't perfect, man. But even while I'm in the cave, I'm contemplating the shadow that I know myself as. The first thing is that you have to have the notion to turn around. And the first thing that you see when you're in that cave and you receive that notion, when you turn around, the first thing you see is not the sun, unless you were extremely rarely lucky. Setting that aside, when you turn around, the first thing you see is the fire. If you've been staring at shadows your whole life, and you turn around and see a fucking fire, one good enough to cast the shadow in a cave, what would your reaction be? What would your reaction be if you were Plato's man in a cave staring at the shadows, and you turned around? First you had to have the notion to turn around, and you saw the fire. What would you think about that fire? We're going to follow the anecdote because there's truth in this fiction. If there's truth in the first fiction, if there's truth in his fiction, then there's truth in this fiction. What are you going to think when you turn around and see that fire after having only ever seen shadows your whole life? And seen those who have lived their lives, lived and died, when you've seen your elders die and perish before you, when you've seen their shadows fall. What will you think? What would I think? Turning around. First as it came here, in the corner of your eye, and pulled you toward it, that fire. What would you think about that? Follow the anecdote. Who lit the fire? Who fed the fire? What would you do if the fire went out and there were no more shadows, right? What would you do? Because the fire, unless that sun coming down on that one day a year hit that hole just right, it would be very rare, and it would not hit every point in the cave, that super illumination. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe three. And year after year after year, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, out of 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. That aside, in the normal, regular, everyday process of things, right? How is that fire fed? How is it that we live in illusion? And when we first open our eyes, when we first begin to open our eyes and turn around and see that fire, for lack of a better term, the false God, whatever that may be. How stunning, how glorious, how beautiful, how powerful. And Prometheus was cursed for giving the secret of fire to man, right? That can be interpreted a billion different ways, but that's another one of those anecdotes that it's worth something no matter how little You know about it. It's one of those bullets that hit us through time. One of those tachyons that hit us from the future. Sorry I'm being like that about it. But there's another secret of fire. How to get past it. If you're in that cave and you turn around and everyone you know is just this shadow, the wise ones amongst us are those who have turned around and looked at the fire. They're like, guys, there's something here. You gotta see it. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Looking at the shadows. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, something big here, something great. Yeah, whatever. We're a bunch of fucking shadows. Da 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 da. And then the wise ones are like, no. There's this fucking thing. There's this fucking thing behind us. You gotta check it out. It's like, fucking hot. It's bright. Ain't no shadows. I can see myself. Wow. Right. And that's most of what happens amongst every type of priest class. PhDs, priests, elite athletes, like the whole bag. Anything that you look up to, at least, is that. Look at this fire. As people start turning around, the one feeding the fire, well, if you got a big old bonfire, man, you know, it's all dark in the cave. You just make sure all your slaves are in the right place. So, here's my fire. Here's all the people chained up looking at the reflection over here. And I'll just sneak in back here where they can't see me. Keep feeding that fire. Keep feeding that fire. Keep feeding that fire. Right? It's a fitting anecdote, that's all. It's worth considering. Good enough for Plato, good enough for me. Sorry, Plato. I don't mean to be flippant, but I do want to lend levity, because what we're talking about is the fullness of existence in this world we live in that eats itself erroneously. That roasts the flesh of former spirit souls on big old fat fires. Butchery and blood and flesh. It's a hard subject, right? And I'm trying to approach it as delicately and honestly as I can, even in my brokenness, right? I'm broken like you. I'm not broken. Okay then. Get up and kill butchery. Right? Well, that's what we're gonna do. Anyway. To get to the truth, to get out of the cave, you have to turn around, look at that fire that none of your brothers and sisters, none of your parents and ancestors have witnessed, seen, talked about, though we've all heard a bit about it. We've heard of this legend, of this dancing unshadow. This dancing unshadow. We've heard this legend of the dancing unshadow. Whatever. And then when you turn around and you see that Dancing Unshadow, that's the only thing you've ever heard. That's God, so far as we know. That's every scientific theory. That's every interpretation of God. Interpretation. To get outside of that fucking cave, you have to do what you've never heard of before. Walk past the fire. You have to walk past that stoked, set, made fire. You have to brave its heat. You have to brave its brightness. But that's not just a bad thing. It's not only a bad thing, in so much as wait till you see the fucking sun. But you also have to do it at the right time. Because the cave ain't all bad. Because that big old fat fire behind you is keeping the fucking he-wolf from coming in the cave. So you don't want to walk out at night. You don't. Unless the fire behind you is a very little one, and your eyes are already attuned to the dark. You want to walk out whenever it's best for you to see, so that when you walk out the door of that cave, you can see. And if it's too bright or too dark, you're in more danger than you were when you're in the fucking cave. But any which way, you have to walk past that fire. You have to walk past that first false god. Depending on how you slice this metaphor, this analogy, this story, this narrative, depending on how you slice it, well, maybe you're in a cave in the Antarctic. Maybe you're in well, I wouldn't say a nice cave, but you know, maybe you're in a rock cave underneath the ice in Antarctica, you know, and it's keeping you warm, it's keeping you away from the polar bears. Great. So then you have more things you got to deal with when you walk out that cave, because then you got to get back down to fucking, you know, down to Funky Town. But for most of us, right? The first thing we see when we turn around, when we realize that we're in the cave, is we see that fire. And it may only be a candle, and it may be a bonfire. And it may be barely enough light to lead the way, and it may be so scorching and ferocious that we fear it will consume us, and it may be so small and so slight that we fear it may go out, and that as we pass it we may get lost because we might not know how far that cave goes before it comes to the other side. Or it may be so large that it fills the entire passageway, so we have to actually walk through the fucking fire, right? And in any of those scenarios, you may win or you may lose. You may or may not get out the cave. And then when you do, you'll have a whole nother host of troubles. Things you never had to deal with. Which brings me to my next subject. Why Why does God allow this? Why does God allow this? Atheists bring it up for good reason. For good reason. It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. Though, typically, as far as media is concerned, it's brought up in the wrong context. But I don't blame you for it. Right? And I'm not saying I have it right, but I think I have a better answer. And in religious circles, the arguments that are brought up are typically shit. Though some are good in so much as they hold a certain amount of truth. But they typically don't deal with the question. Because on both sides, it tends to reduce to randomity, randomity on the one side, as far as like evolution and so on, and then on the other side, I mean, reduces like all the way down. That's pretty much where it comes to, and then on the other side, it pretty much comes down to, God has a plan, or I mean, all the way down. Once you collapse it, God has a plan. God is perfect. And then somewhere in between, in like agnostic secularism, is circle of life. Right? They're all fucking wrong. I've thought about this a lot, you know, and I've had a lot of shit happen to me. You know, I'm speaking prosaically about it now, but you know, if ever, you know, when I'm at the point where I feel like ripping my fucking skull off, it doesn't come to mind to, oh, I got to get my phone and press record. You know. Though, you know, I hope to become more brave. That like up to that point, I've made a couple videos where I cry. Like I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did, right? We really need to be more honest with each other. I need to be much more honest with myself. But anyway, to my mind, the slam dunk, it's kind of a slam dunk argument, even though I've seen it, is that God is, you know, it's easy and it's nice that we have this interweb, because most people at least have some idea of like what Google can do. But if we put that into the God context, we're always going off course, always, you know. And unfortunately, the way the Bible talks about it, the language of the Bible is like, you gotta stop this shit, you motherfuckers, you badass bitch motherfuckers, you dumbass shits, dumb motherfuckers. Stop it, stop it, stop it, you know. And that's basically the language of the Bible. However, you know, a lot of people, yeah, man, people don't fucking realize the way people killed each other back then, sacrificed each other. Like, that's the shit they were fucking talking about. We're like, don't be a no. You know, we think it's all about the don't be a prostitute. You know, don't say a swear word. don't work, don't work and don't work on the Sabbath, or don't perform miracles on the Sabbath, and this and that, whatever. Now, at a deeper level, that means something else. But like, for the shit most of us are dealing with, don't mean shit. Because we're already so completely fucked up, it doesn't even fucking matter. It's like, go ahead, preach on the fucking Sabbath. You're fucked anyway. But the accumulated free will, God's always rerouting, because we're always going off. Spoiler alert, because I'm gonna I'm gonna go right to the conclusion. Butchery, bondage, flesh, blood, butchery, sacrifice, bondage, specifically any othering. We've reduced it to black and white today. And maybe that's, on a spiritual level, fine. But butchery, bondage, murder, violence has always existed. We simultaneously live in the safest, most abundant world ever and the most violent, butcherous world ever. Right? That's what we need to fucking focus on. That's the split. I'm too hard on Plato, which means therefore I'm too hard on Socrates. But anyway, the Socratic dictum, like begets like, right? Butchery begets butchery. And no matter what your belief system, what your structure, whatever it is, no matter what it is, the meat that we eat, right, is the closest thing to us. And as a man, the woman beside me, the woman over there, beautiful, ugly, young, old, it's my mom, it's my aunt, it's my sister, it's my niece, it's my cousin, it's my friend, it's someone I don't know. Maybe it's my enemy, maybe it's someone who hates me. Human beings are the only species who are their own number one predator. How smart are we? Right? But then people say human beings are a disease. Yet human beings are also the kindest, most benevolent, most self-sacrificing, most giving beings on the planet. Give money to protect everything. Trees, bugs, animals, even fucking predators who would eat them, etc. Right? We're both. People attribute that to the circle of life in God's plan. God's plan is for you to stand the fuck up. I'm sorry I'm saying it like this, because there's ways I need to stand up. But the number one worst thing that we do, it infects the whole spiritual realm. This is another reason why I'm kind of a little bit against Plato, is the whole idea of the Platonic forms, but there's no life in them. There's no, or at least in the interpreters of Platonic forms. That's why I prefer Platonic forms as corrected by Aristotle and interpreted by Iamblichus, carried on to St. Augustine, is that, so far as I know, anecdotally. Right? But there's anecdotes about other philosophers, and I'm just like, nope, you're onto something, nope, I like you, right? That's I forget the movie. It's that smoking weed movie. It was a reference to that when the guy quits the fast food joint. But anyway, thought forms, the spiritual realm, the holographic two-dimensional, the infinitely two-dimensional globe. So it's like a plane and a globe at the same time. Or maybe the Riemannian surface that the globe of existence exists within. However you want to slice it. Topologically, the veil. However you want to slice it. Our free will is necessary. God didn't allow it. God couldn't have created without it. And I also, people, and I think the Jewish tradition, or some sects of the Jewish tradition understand, not all of them, probably not most of them, right? But some sects of the Jewish tradition seem to understand this a little better, is that God's hurting, man. One of the things that the most perfect, complete harmonically, but not complete as our free will is concerned. Complete harmonically, the most perfect. And how would you know the difference between different Cantorian infinities? How would you know the difference, right? How would you know the difference between fucking Thor and Superman? How would I? I don't. I'm still creeping up on that fucking fire. Why does God allow this? God doesn't. We make it. But also, when I say we, I mean everything ever. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Why? Because in that stacked point of eternity, where all points are, where all souls, where all monads are, in that little stacked point of eternity, where everything is, there was one among us who first said, wait a minute, I exist. That's the one in the cave who turned around first. The next thing he said was, if this is all you ever knew, all these shadows, and you turn around, you don't see a shadow anymore. What's the first thing you're going to think? Am I? And that's what set the whole thing off. But no one had ever heard, am I? Before. No one had ever thought to ask the question. None of us else in eternity ever had thought to ask the question, am I? Or these shadows. These shadows. The stacked blackness in one little place. That's what we are. This is becoming more story. Turned around. Said, am I? No one had ever heard that before. But as soon as that one in that first soul, not an unmoved mover, a moved mover. Am I? Everyone else heard, am I? Echoed off the chambers, am I, am I, am I, am I? Some began to turn around. No more shadow. This thing they've never seen before. Am I? Am I? Am I? Am I? Am I? But once the first one said, am I? First one said, I am. Just got him to turn around. Said, am I? When the others, who never thought to see either one, they hear, am I? They turn around. They turn around without the I am. We all turn around without the I am. We turn around with the am I. Again, it's metaphor. You could pick it apart. I'm already doing it. It's like, no, just go with the flow. All the echoes, am I, am I, am I, am I. All the am I's turn around. See the flame. Because they hear am I. They turn around. Am I? And turn back around. I am. But as soon as that first I am turns around, says am I, and hears the response, that I am becomes a kind of vesica. It's a good way to think about it. Grows a little bit. Yes, I am. There are others. And he hears another I am. Or she. I'm sorry. I'm speaking about myself. I'm a guy. I'm sorry. And I just encourage because it's part of my mission, the whole, like, the power of the word God, but the power of the word mom. The cave, the womb. But that's what set the whole thing off. It's like the Scream, the painting The Scream. It's kind of a crappy painting. Like, if your kid brought it home from school, you'd be like, oh, that's nice. Last time I was into art, which was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, was like really when I stopped buying art mags. I used to be with art magazines and art books and so on, but last I'd heard, and again, this was a while ago. I know things have changed, but like at the time, like the Scream, the painting The Scream, the Edward Munch's painting of The Scream sold for, like, it was the most expensive painting ever sold. Now, of course, there are priceless paintings. You know, the Mona Lisa would sell for, like, I don't know, the price of Mexico. Right? Sorry, Mexico. I just didn't want to say the United States because we have the Smithsonian. But I'm also just talking about, like, dollar money. I don't mean, like, real. I was trying to come up with an analogy. I failed. I'm sorry. I should have said Canada. Anyway, it's not easy growing up in an environment like, I'm in that cave, man. I'm fed all this shit. So what comes out of me sometimes is complete shit, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to get beyond it, but, like, still keep moving, right? I have white privilege. I have 21st century privilege. I have, I've described it before, like my job. I work for a bunch of people who have second homes up north from me, so it's like I have a secure job while other people are day laborers, like, beside the street, and I'm living like a work. Like today I was at Walmart, and it was like There were a bunch of, I don't know where they were from, but they were obviously like, you know, Latin in the Mexico South American sense. A lot of them, they weren't really, they're just, everybody was speaking Spanish and so on. There's not a lot of that in New Hampshire, but there's some and so on, and it's like obviously their life is like fucking 1,000 times harder than mine, and when I see them, I actually just feel bad for them. Nice, Jeff. But like when I, see that's the thing. Like some stereotypes are true, right? Or true to an extent, in so much as like whoever those dudes were, a couple women, but like 10 dudes, like because I was cashing my check at Walmart, they were cashing their check at Walmart, so we have a lot in common. But they were all Western Unioning. And it's like so I had to wait for quite a while. And but like they all work way fucking harder than I do. And obviously they're sending money to their family. Like they care about their family. They do more for their family than I do for my family. They work harder than I do. They care about each other and like stick together as friends better than I do. I don't even have any fucking friends to speak of anymore. Not to say that, if any of them asked me for anything, I'd do it. And if I asked any of them for anything, they'd help me still, right? So like, I still understand like a bond, but like actively they do so much for each other and so on, and you can just see it. You just see it. It's like you just see it. So anyway, I'm sorry for making that joke, but the fact that they're sending money back to the fact that they're sending money back home, like every single, 10 dudes right in front of me, bang, 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 right? Kind of speaks to what I'm talking about, like the devaluation and so on, right? Anyway, the Scream. It was the most expensive painting in the world. If your kid brought it home, you'd be like, eh. Depends how old they were, right? If they were 5, you'd be like, damn, hang it on the fridge. If they were 25, you'd be like, that's nice, honey. Stuff it in a drawer. Sold for $200 million, eh? But anyway, I guess you never know what's going to touch you. You never know what's going to catch, man. Greatest fisherman in the world. Like Mr. Miyagi, and then fucking Daniel-san with his fucking chopsticks gets the fly first try. That was a movie, but shit like that happens. Sometimes that sun hits that hole at the right place, and you're in the right place at the right time. That aside, the accumulated error of our free will is what creates that evil. And it's just like the way I treat my body, right? You do a little this, you do a little that, you do a little this, you do a little that, you do a little good, you do a little bad. But then eventually, something grows, something gets out of line. You gotta have some surgery, you get a tumor, you get a cyst, you get a boil, you get a zit, whatever. Something bad's in, it's gotta get out. Our accumulated free will ends up collecting karmically or energetically, electrically, in places around the world. And just like with cancer, like sometimes God has to act with chemo, being like, these dudes still fucking doing the wrong shit, but we're gonna give them a bunch of chemo. We're gonna poison the poison and see how that does. There's gonna be side effects. It ain't gonna be good, but while I'm still smoking my butts, drinking my beers, eating my ho-hos. etc., having bad thoughts, everything, all that shit. Or maybe you get the bad shit and you go straight down to the, was it Garrison Institute in Mexico, where they shove you full of fucking vegetables, give you coffee enemas, and fucking cure cancer that fucking America can't cure in Mexico. And that's priceless. Priceless. The movie The Beautiful Truth. And that's a much nicer way. But anyway, however it happens, like, in the world, these things happen through all that physics shit, all the dark matter, dark energy, whatever that potential fifth force that the Fermi lab may have found recently. Like, the shit builds up energetically, because killing shit and spilling blood, man, it totally infects fucking everything. I was listening to Brian Greene. He was deriding the other day for good reason. You know, I'm not shitting on him for saying it, and he's right. Like, people want to invoke, you know, quantum mechanics for every spooky difference, you know, in the world or whatever, or like every weird thing, say, oh, it's all quantum, you know, or whatever. But then there's also people who are working outside of the quantum framework and making predictions in physics and so on. Notably, there's two, I can't remember their names, not because they're women, but because I've only seen each of them once, but there's like these two different women who are like working outside of the quantum framework, and they're young, they're both young, and they're both not American, I don't believe, or if they are, they're like first generation, but I think. Um, but like whatever that thing is, like quantum's effective, so it's speaking to something. And like whatever that entanglement nature is, like, and again, I guess I need to prove it because I need more understanding myself, but also like I've seen it as a thing. And all that accumulated error builds up like an etheric, karmic, quantum, beneath the surface, dark energy cancer. And shit's gonna fucking go down. God's always trying to correct the situation. So why does God allow this? God does the bad things, or allows the bad things through us, sometimes, because our free will like necessitates it. There are some things that even God can't reach around. Or rather, the only thing that he can do to touch it is to make it less bad. And I'm sorry I said he. That's just part of my upbringing. I'm struggling desperately to get that out of my mind. When I saw God's backside, it was a pretty vicious fuck. Vicious looking. So to speak. But that's like the horror of being God, man. Being God fucking sucks. And the only thing that gets God through the suckiness of being God who hears everything, who hears every God, who hears every no! People say God is all love, but God is the biggest love. God is 51% love. A little bit of joy, and a whole fucking heaping of sad. God's not an angry or jealous God. It's our accumulated free will that is the anger and the jealousy that God combats. And occasionally, God has to swat us on the butt. But it's not punishment. It's not God allowing certain things to happen that are really horrific. Really horrific. God's dealing with the butterfly effect and our free will and our continuing free will within the butterfly effect. And if we don't actively choose to do the right thing, there's nothing God can do. And again, bringing it back to the atheistic standpoint, if you don't believe in God, then you have to deal with the space where God isn't. As it so happens, that's the exact same space God has to deal with. But I guess I don't want to dare you to go there, but creep a little closer. Creep a little closer to that place where God isn't. Be careful. But creep a little closer to that place where God isn't. And imagine the butchery more fully. And if you're an atheist of the type that has known butchery that I don't know, maybe there's a lot I could learn from you. But I'd also say, please consider for a moment that God allows certain things because God allows our free will and our accumulated error of free will. And when I say our, I don't just mean us as humans. I mean every independent thing has a kind of free will, a limited free will. And all of that builds up. But we have a certain type of manipulative power. And we butcher like no other. And until we stop the butchery, there's no hope. No hope. It is the absolute number one biggest thing we can do. In a sense, it's even bigger than like any other type of equality, or it's not. I mean, raising the status of every subjugated human. But that will never, what I'm saying is that will never happen until the worldwide butchery of flesh and blood ceases. It will never happen. It will never happen. Ever. It might, maybe little pockets here or there. There might be this nice city here and this nice neighborhood there for a time. But as a united worldwide, enormous body of people, it'll never happen until the butchery stops. It's not even a warning. It's just, I've seen it, man. And I hope to prove it. Because I could go like this. I don't know, fucking listen to me. Right? But if I can find a way to prove it, that'll help. Or offer the proof that I've come to in the best way that I can. And find ways to talk about it, describe it, and make it clear.